You're listening to the Journey Podcast. How can young adults find hope and healing on their recovery journey? Stay tuned for today's episode to find out more. Hi, I'm Petra Brunbauer, and with decades of experience with sadness, pain, anxiety, and stress, I finally figured out how to leave all that behind. And this podcast shows you how to break free permanently so you can reclaim your sanity and find the self-esteem and energy to go after the life you desire. With real talk about mental health, holistic healing, and the tough journey of coming out the other end. This is the Journey Podcast. Welcome to today's episode. In this episode, we embark on a compassionate exploration of the challenges and triumphs in navigating recovery for young adults. Our conversation delves into a transformative program founded by our guest, tailored to meet the unique needs of young adults within the correction system. Together, we navigate the intricate journey of recovery, shedding light on the vital role that specialized programs play in providing support, guidance, and hope to individuals during a pivotal stage in their lives. As we navigate the complexities of young adult recovery within the correction system, we uncover the profound impact that tailored programs can have on fostering personal growth, resilience, and rehabilitation. Throughout our discussion, we recognize the potential for positive change within this demographic, emphasizing the importance of offering second chances and holistic support to young adults on their path to recovery. Richard Jones's 37-year nursing career started entirely by accident. After serving in the United States Air Force as a signal intelligence NCO, he entered civilian life focused on creating a career as a scientific glassblower. Still, after paying full tuition for the upcoming semester, a corporate-sponsored student bumped him from the program. Scrambling fast for an alternative, he took the suggestion of his mother and grandmother, who were both nurses, and entered the nursing program. After starting in long-term care, he eventually found a home in correctional and substance use nursing. The correlation between corrections and substance use is where he began to take a deep interest in easing the struggles for families needing life-saving change. Second Starts is the manifestation of his mission. Here is my interview with Richard Jones. Hi, Rich. It's so great to have you on the podcast today. I have been looking forward to getting to chat with you because navigating recovery is such an important and vital topic to discuss. Welcome to the podcast.
Pedro, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I've enjoyed your podcast, so I'm just happy to be here with you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm always glad when people enjoy the podcast and we can give them something that they like listening to. So I am very pleased that you're here today because I think this is such an important topic to talk about. Now, Do you want to share a little bit about yourself and your story and how you got to do what you do today?
Okay, Pedro, sort of interesting story. I call myself, and I think about how I came to this point, and I kind of joke with myself, I call myself the accidental nurse because none of this was really planned at all. I'll start the story. When I first got out of the military, I was in the United States Air Force, worked in the systems intelligence and intelligence field. And when I got out of the service, I didn't really know what I was going to do. I did 4 years. I wasn't sure what I was going to do. So I got out and I decided, well, I'm going to go to school. I had a cousin who was actually an expert glass blower, believe it or not. That's what he did. He made trinkets. He had worked for industry. He did a number of things. And I used to help him out before I went into service. So I decided, our local community college had a glass blowing program. It was perfect for me. I couldn't believe actually my luck. So I enrolled in the glass blowing program. I got a little bit of recommendation from him. And we were prepared to go. And I think we were about 2 weeks away from school. I got bumped out of the program because the school had, made more provisions for some of their industrial accounts that people work with. So the numbers squeezed me out. Didn't have a corporate sponsor, so I got squeezed out. And so 2 weeks before school, I literally did not have anything to go to school for. And I had paid for the semester and everything. So with all this indecision, I didn't know what to do. Well, my mother comes to me and says, well, why don't you think about joining the nursing program? I looked at her like, the nursing program? Are you serious? My mother was a nurse. I've been a nurse for years. And just so happens my grandmother was a nurse also. At that point, I couldn't have told you what they did past taking temperatures. I never really paid attention. I knew my mom was a nurse. I knew my grandma was a nurse, but it literally never crossed my mind what they actually did. And here I am 2 weeks before the semester starts, and I'm have to consider, am I going to do this? So I didn't have many other alternatives. I figured, well, I'll just jump in it. That's to get into school. I pay for the semester. I'll get in it. If I don't like it, I'll get out. Well, 37 years later, I'm still in. And just so happens at that time, when I started school and was beginning my nursing career, I also got interested in something else. I got interested in motivational speaking, not to be a motivational speaker. I was just very interested. I bought the Tony Robbins program, Personal Power. I kind of liked it. I liked listening to that stuff. I liked hearing it. And then shortly after, I liked listening to it and hearing, Tony Robbins, Les Brown, all those guys. I started getting interested in not just what they were saying, but sort of the mental mechanisms of what they were saying and what it could and should do for people, the good and the bad. So I got interested in thus the mechanisms of motivational speaking. It stayed a hobby, actually, just reading about it, thinking about it, listening to the different guys talk, listening to their styles and everything. Still never wanted to be a speaker, just was interested. I focused most of my attention on my nursing career. And at that time, it was long-term nursing. And I focused most of my attention on that still. Fast forward years later, I upgraded my nursing credentials and I became eligible for another position at the county nursing home, which I worked. It was a position that I was also brought to me, and I had no idea what they were talking about. They asked me to take over as director of nurses at the county correctional facility. Well, the first thing I said was, they got nurses at the county correctional facility? I was oblivious to the fact that there were even nurses at the jail. I never even considered it, didn't know anything about it, never heard tell of it. And yet now I'm being asked to head the department. So since it was an upgrade in position, an upgrade in pay, status in my nursing career, I decided to look into it and eventually took the position. So here I am in another position that I had no idea what was going on when it was new to me, didn't know I was going to be in it almost weeks before, but here I was. In that position, I learned a lot of things and did a lot of things. And if you know anything about corrections, it's half corrections, 3/4 addiction, because most of the people that you come in, especially in your local county jail, have some type of substance abuse problem. So I got into heavily learning how to treat and deal with those situations. It wasn't until later that I really took an interest in a particular facet of what I was doing. And being a director of the department, I kind of took the lead wherever I wanted to. And one of the areas that I wanted to take lead in was dealing with the younger class of inmates, the newcomers, the young ones, the ones just out of either juvenile or just getting out of juvenile, younger people. And I always told them that from the 17 to the 24-year-olds is what I'll deal with. And the reason why I was so interested in it, because I took notice the difference between how they were when I first met them the first time. And unfortunately, there's a high level of recidivism in most of the correctional situations, and how they became later on as I saw them months or even years down the road, their difference in attitude, and the difference in who and what they were. And I was fascinated by that. And around this time, my motivational history started kicking in. And I was saying, well, what in the world makes them go from being the first time? I'll tell you a story. I call this the Sally Port story, as a matter of fact. Quick explanation. Sally Port is a little room in between the main entrance of the jail and the outside. Small room. A lot of times that's where you'll meet to talk to people. Lawyers will meet their clients. It's a small room with a table is what we did. And this is where I met with everyone that I talked to. I call it the Sally Port story because I would see an individual the first time, a younger individual, and they would be scared to death. Scared, confused, willing to do anything their parents said now, because no matter how tough they acted on the street, the feeling of those doors closing behind you had the same effect on pretty much all of them. And I would take note to this and notice how it would change as the time went on. As I saw them the next time, a little different. And I saw them next time. Some of those I saw years later, and they were hardened and they were different and they weren't scared anymore. I went over to myself and I said, you know what? What's the difference? And why can't we do a better job catching those people early? And I came up with, that's why I call it Disciple Story, because out of that story, comes the revelations to me that there's some things I didn't know about it. A lot of these guys come from all cultures, all backgrounds. A lot of times they think, well, just culture, people with poor culture or people with, no support end up coming to the jail. And that's not true. You get all types, You get the children of the wealthy, you get the children of the poor. You get all types of people. And I noticed that their reactions weren't much different depending on what they were. I noticed their reactions weren't much different depending on their support systems. When I would get calls about them or have to deal with family members, the responses and the actions and the feelings and the sense of confusion were basically all the same depending on where they come. I noticed a lot of things were the same about that population that I was dealing with. Progression, how their support network worked with them, how our facility and our resources dealt with them. And I noticed that there were so many things that were very similar that it boggled my mind that it was a lot different than what I would have thought. Before I started, I would have thought, okay, well, I'm going to get these guys and there's no hope for them. I saw so much potential and intelligence in these young people that I said, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better way, but I'm part of the way that we're doing it now. And I'm not seeing so much what we're doing wrong. So, what can I do? And I toyed with that thought and that information for a few years, just dealing with it and putting things together in my mind and looking at the situation. And it really wasn't until I approached my retirement to the correctional situation that I started to put together what I thought was an approach that I could do something in a nursing way. And that was important to me, to do it in a nursing way, that I could help this situation out. So that's how the genesis of what I came to think about and want to do. I put it like this: helping the family and support networks of young adults in recovery heal faster. And it's important to me to eliminate the fear of relapse, because relapse is so prevalent that what we need to do is attack relapse. And that's what I put my mind to do. So that's how it got started.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. And what a journey you've had through the correctional system and trying to come up with something that could help. And I do think that addiction is a prevalent topic nowadays. And I think if we look at it, and I don't know, maybe you have some stats on that, it seems to be getting worse rather than better with the years. So this kind of work that you do, I think, is hugely important, and especially supporting also the families of people who are struggling. So thank you so much for doing this kind of work and for stepping in and thinking about what can be done to make this better. Now, how do you work today with families and people who are struggling with addiction? Do you work in a hospital setting or a clinic, or how do you work with people today?
Well, today, when I'm working with an individual or the families, mostly the family situation, I like to work in an entire family unit. I think that's extremely important, that we, really bring in the support network, and it's put in a special way. So normally it's just by, correspondence and Zoom will do it. It's a matter of setting up a program and guiding them through it in order to make this change. I don't call it so much a program when I'm speaking. I call it an installment, because what we're doing is we're installing a new way to approach the entire situation. It's more like an installment. And once this is installed, they see things in a totally different manner. So that's what we do. And I'm counseled to make sure that I say that it is a psychoeducational, non-clinical intervention. And that non-clinical part is extremely important to me, because as a nurse, I really wanted to highlight the work of the practitioners that I worked with. I didn't believe that everything the practitioners were doing wrong and the system was failing them. From the inside out, I've never believed that. And I think that's what you hear a lot. There's no resources. There's no this, there's no that. We're leaving people behind. They're falling through the cracks. That does happen, true. But I think what happens more is that they're put in situations where they're not absorbing and utilizing the resources that we're giving, not through their own fault, because of many areas and many reasons, but the efforts. I see so many practitioners, therapists, social workers, the physicians that I work with, all stepping in for all these people and doing great work, great work. And the level of recidivism stays fairly high. And that was one of the things I wanted to work on. We're giving all this, and public perception would be that we're not because of the results we're getting. And I don't know, I've toyed with what the actual stats are for recidivism, but in my eyes, they were very high. I don't know what they're writing down, but whatever they're writing down is lower than what it really is, especially for those young people. And I thought that, how can I do this in a non-clinical way that I can work to accentuate and make more powerful the work that the clinicians were doing? What could I do? And that's why I like to stress the non-clinical intervention problems. As a matter of fact, the referrals that I get are from clinicians. So it's not an instead of, it's a multiplier.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, I can imagine that when you work with people, there already are probably a lot of emotions going on, and the situation is very stressful. So how do you work with your patients or clients in a way that reduces that stress that they're already feeling in this recovery situation?
Well, Petra, in my heavy thinking about this situation, I sort of looked in three areas that really came up over and over again in my conversations with individuals, families, and going over to myself. There were three areas that really we needed to work on. And I stress work on simultaneously. And I stress that because these things have to be done in accord. The first thing is, and I call them the three pillars of transformation. The first pillar is what I call therapeutic comprehension. And what I mean by that is that what we need to do is turn on all the mechanisms that allow the individual to more readily and more easily absorb the teaching and the counsel and the education that he's getting from the clinician. And I saw that was a really big thing. They could get all the information and all the education and, really the best counsel they can get. But it doesn't do any good if, because of the other distractions, they can't hear it. They don't know how to digest it. They don't know how to put it in its place and utilize it. And without knowing that or understanding some of the mechanisms and understanding where distraction comes from, what distraction is and how it affects them, and we go back to that do they understand what that was actually getting past them? I go by a statement that I use to them, and your attention is gold. In other words, if you notice what people are doing to get your attention, if you notice the amount of money, what advertisers spend, what everyone who wants your attention, wants your money, wants you to follow them, if you look at all the effort that they put into it, it's no wonder that you're distracted from your clinicians who aren't able to put that kind of effort into you getting their attention. They put all their effort into learning their craft and delivering that information to you and helping you, but they don't spend time and money stealing your attention. So what I do is I say, hey, I want to be an advertiser per se for your clinicians. We want to take away some of the time that you use in distraction and devote some of that time into understanding more about the education and the benefits of the education for you. And when we slowly reduce the time of distraction and slowly increase the time that you are putting into attention for things that are to your betterment or for your self-agency, then we start to overtake and change your dynamic slowly. So, and that is, to me, what the therapeutic comprehension part is, this isolating and bypassing that distraction, understanding that your attention is worth everything, and you have to decide where to spend it instead of let it be decided for you. Okay. And it's understanding that once we do that, we start to increase that knowledge, increase your ability to now make proper decisions. The second thing, we had to change the way we were looking at the support network. What happens so many times is that the people who are in front line helping individuals so many times are close relatives who mean well, but there are so many emotions of guilt and shame that the people who are tasked most with being your support network, because of the situation that they're in and because of the feelings, a lot of times the feelings of guilt and shame are only increased. And that got in the way so many times of helping that person make that change. So what we did was we came up with another way to, we call it evaluate, manage, and grow the support network in a different way, to where we bring on different people that are normally in their network, bring on different people that they can immediately respect. It's very difficult sometimes to respect the people that love you, especially people who have been in trouble and have had angst times. So what we do is we do that by changing the way we deal. And in the program, we deal and grow with that network very specifically and build it up slowly and let it gain steam with people who will be probably in part of their support network for a long time. These new people do not have to be burdened with the guilt and shame aspect. They can be solely invested in the moving forward of that individual instead of dealing with the old feelings, the guilt and shame. The same benefit of advocacy, the same benefit of supports still apply, and yet we reduce the guilt and shame quotient. So we really multiply the power and effect of that network. And thirdly, I call this creating a self-refueling transformation. And the reason why I call it self-refueling and transformation is because we tell the individuals this. It is only important that you make a 180-degree change immediately in your perception of your situation. There is no need for you to think or feel that you can cure yourself or heal any problems immediately. That's impossible. Well, we can make an 180-degree change in your perception of your situation right away. I call that to them what I call the deception of your condition. In other words, because you have had A, B, C, D, or E, and anything can be plugged into those slots, anything. And it's true for all of us, that you automatically have assumed that now you have to behave in a certain way. And that's normal for you to understand that. What we do in the program is make you understand, no, those things actually have no real bearing on how you perceive your condition and the actions that you take. The problems that you have can be dealt with by the professionals that we are in our therapeutic comprehension model. In other words, if you have mental health problems, we have mental health people to help you work on those problems, and we can utilize them. Medical problems, we have medical professionals that can help you utilize those things. Any problem that you have, there's a mental health professional that can step in and help you with that. What we need to do is change your perception and your output. And that is what's going to multiply with the help that you get from helping professionals and the support you get from a more enhanced support network. When you multiply now that self-refueling, and I'll get a little bit later to self-refueling, how we make it self-refueling, how we create an engine that helps them make that transformation. When you take those three things together, that is what I call full force. A little thing I got from corrections. Quick story, one of the captains I was working for, they had a bad guy coming to the jail. Bad guy. He had been doing some bad things. He was beating cops up. He was doing all kinds of bad character. They went down to meet him when he came to the facility. They went down with all their equipment, recording equipment, 9 different fully loaded response officers and everything. And I said, well, Captain, is this guy such a bad guy? You need 9 people and all these other support people? He said, Rich, what we do is we use the theory of overwhelming force. In other words, if I come at this problem with all my resources to bear, I dissuade the individual from putting up resistance. Once I dissuade the individual from putting up resistance, I dissuade now accidents, anyone getting hurt. I dissuade any extra time in the fact that we have less reports to write because everything's condensed. We cut down the ability for bad things to happen with overwhelming force. I believe in attacking these young people with that type of overwhelming force where we quickly dissuade the bad and overwhelm it with all our resources to bear. And that's what I call the overwhelming force. So those 3 things I call the pillars of transformation. We attack it simultaneously. We have a good chance to turn the individual's perception around. And that's the most important thing.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and this works hand in hand, like you said, with the physicians also, and who perform a more clinical part. And then is this more of what you term an organic recovery then that you work with side by side with clinicians?
I call it organic recovery because, and it's a simple metaphor this very simple metaphor, but it holds true. If you have a stream and the stream is polluted, if you just stop putting trash and pollution into the stream, what will happen? The stream will clean itself eventually. All you have to do is stop polluting it. I felt the same way with young individuals. If we can just start managing distraction and stop the bad things that were going in and clear the individual's mind to organically clean themselves. The Essential Change Program is not a program of education. It's a program of releasing and learning how to apply a non-distracted life towards the end from helping professionals. And it allows you to organically, by using yourself, and that is the part why I call self-refueling. Once we clean that mechanism out and have them pointing in a different way in a mindset of progression and achievement, that engine will feed on itself. And that was when I termed organic recovery, I meant a recovery from within, using their own natural abilities and powers and thought processes to make it something that continues, not just reaching recovery. I thought that just reaching recovery is what most of our system did. I didn't want to just reach recovery with them. I want them to reach recovery and then have an engine that continued and manifested recovery. I tell them it's what we call swinging through the target. In other words, just don't stop at the target. You go through the target. And that means that not only do you heal yourself, but you become a mechanism for constant healing and a mechanism for, being a benefit to those and situations around you. So that's where we shoot for. We don't shoot for just healing. We shoot for through the target, being a benefit to your situation and your community. That's where we shoot for.
Yeah, that sounds like a great program. And how are you finding that this program is working? Are you having success with this? Are you finding that the patients and clients you work with stay in recovery? How are you finding the outcomes of this program?
I have found that they are doing a lot better, but that wasn't really where I was looking to see exactly where I was doing. Where I wanted to see the most benefit was with the actual family unit. I go back to the genesis of why we did this. I get the benefit mostly from dealing with the family units because they're involved in the program also. I found that once we restore that individual to the family unit in a way that causes a regainment and increase in the trust factor, once we do that, I've always felt that the mission was a success. Anything else that happens after that is definitely going to have to be up to the individual. The individual will stay engaged and stay clean from following up continually with his programs and mechanisms that will help him do that. What we look to do is restore that trust factor and make that person now a vital part of their family unit and community unit. Once we do that, we feel like the organic recovery has started. Recovery in itself is a part of one of our principles. We got 7 principles to the program, but the main one, my main important one, is lifelong learning. Once we set that individual on the path of lifelong learning and a regainment of trust with the people around him and him being an asset to them, those are the few things that human beings need in order to be successful. So we found that we didn't have that much worry in recovery. I have seen some of the people that we have started with saying, and I've seen each and every one that I've ever been in contact with, they've had no issue. They've met well because they've embraced the lifelong learning. And it works with the older people. It works surprisingly well with the younger people. Once I install the lifelong learning part of that, it really works wonders. So,
yeah. And do you find that you also work with individuals who don't have any support systems? And how do you deal with that? Do you then try and find support within the community rather than the family? Or how do you work with individuals that might not have a family unit or anyone to support them directly?
Well, most of the people that I have worked with, because the way I present the program is presented to me with and from some type of support, some a little bit more, some a little bit less. But without some type of support, I find it much more difficult to engage. The program itself, even though I call it Essential Program, comes from a theory which this is penned by Second Star to myself, so I don't think you'll see this anywhere else. I call it leverage-based tapered life management. It's a life management system, and it's leverage-based, meaning when I start the program with an individual having problems, with an individual that is going to be their support system. When they come into the program, they know me and at least one other person is supporting them. We can grow from there. But I start with a support person, and the great majority of the time, that support person is a close support person. We branch out after that, but it's only been to date, it's been some therapists and mostly family members, therapists who have referred family members who have then come and said, hey, you're going to be the first support person. So we usually start with a support person first in order to get a hold and start this leverage-based approach.
Yeah, that sounds fascinating. And where can individuals take part in this program, or if they have a loved one who would benefit from this program, is this something they have to come to in person, or do you also offer this online or only in a specific state? How can people take part in this program?
Well, anyone who is interested in hearing more about it at all can go to my website, and it's secondstarts.com. It's the number 2, NDSTARTS.com. So don't write second in there, the word second, write 2, NDSTARTS.com. And you go in there, you look over the website quickly, but there's also a place where you can get in contact with us. What I will do immediately is send them out basic information about, what we do, how we do it, how we can help. It's the kind of thing that usually I tell people, if you have a need for this, then it's the kind of thing we need to start right away. I focus this on the young adults, maybe 17 to 24 is around the sweet spot we're looking for. Before that and after that, to me, there are different mindsets that come into play, and this program is not best suited for that. I'm looking for the person who is changing, becoming, and new at being an adult, and they're in that sweet spot. Once we get there, we can talk about how we can initiate this in a way that helps them. A lot of the people are people who are headed into a rehab situation or coming out of one or have been in one and failed it a couple of times. That's really big. Have been in and done no good. The absorption wasn't proper. And the system is not built to let the family know how to deal with that. Also, individuals who have come out of an incarceration situation. Best time, I basically tell them that I'm much more interested in first and second time offenders because that's the sweet spot where we can get in. I would prefer always that this was done in a prevention manner, but it's my word of mouth, my marketing make it difficult to do it in prevention. If I could get people to do this at the first sign of trouble before they needed rehab or before they were in an incarceration situation, if we could do that beforehand, I think it would be even much more effective. But people usually don't look for help or trouble till they actually get in trouble. As I would prefer that. So we deliver the program. Like I say, it's 4 stages of delivery, so people will know exactly what they're going to get. We do it in 4 things. The first part of it inside the installation is just basically a sense of self-agency and ownership. There are a lot of things about that individuals don't understand how to acquire, how to use, how to keep. What their actual value is and how to see their value grow. Not just, in a part where somebody tells you this, you write it down, you read it, you feel good. No, actually put it into action and see it work and see it grow, their sense of agency. We teach them how to communicate. We tell them that 80% of communication is what you take in, you see, you hear, you feel. And the 20% should be what we call efficient output, not just, very efficient output. We talk to them about how to organize and plan. And this is not just a program where we give you a program and you learn how to fill in the blanks so you can organize yourself. It's a work with you situation where you help to develop your type of organization and planning model. And then we help you work it and see it grow. And then the last phase, which I found in jail was the most important part, I call it the preparatory phase. In other words, I can tell you 20 million things, but until you have figured out and strategized how you're going to put this into play in a real world, live bullet situation, it does wash. So we spend a lot of time in the program, the back third of the program, talking about preparation on using this and making it self-repeating and self-fulfilling in real life, real world situation. That's important to us.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. So that the individuals who take this program actually can have the benefits of applying that in their lives. So,
yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing about this wonderful program with us. And Rich also has his own podcast called Essential Change, the podcast. And you can listen in from your favorite podcast provider. And we will also be linking to all of Rich's offerings in the show notes as well. So be sure to check there on how you can find out more about his program and how you can listen to his podcast and connect with him if this episode has aligned with you and you might want to work with him, or you know of someone who might benefit from being part of this Essential Change program that Rich is running. Well, this has been another incredible episode, and I really hope our listeners have connected with our exploration of navigating recovery and have taken away something for their own journeys, or maybe even the journey of a loved one who they might know is struggling. It has been fantastic chatting with you on the podcast today, Rich, and thank you so much for bringing all of your wisdom and knowledge about this topic today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, I would love to have you back sometime in the future to find out how the program is doing and if you've added anything, and maybe also are coming more into the preventative phase like you're talking about. I'd love to hear more. So I look forward to chatting with you again in the future. Thank you so much, Rich, and take care.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a good day, hon. Thank you.
Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to listen in. If you enjoy the Journey podcast, please support us by subscribing, sharing on social media, and leaving us a review. We appreciate you. And you can find more of The Journey on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and our website, thejourney.com. Sending you love and courage, and see you next time.